Hi everybody, welcome. MSOM 602, Lesson 4 recap, Lesson 5 preview from Ping. And this is a mountainous community outside of Hong Kong. That's my new buddy, the big Buddha, behind me. And in order to get here, you have to take a cable car over a mountainous community. It's about, I guess it's 4 miles on a cable car. It takes 25 minutes to get here, but really kind of a neat area. Again, right out in the middle of nowhere, but it's actually close to the airport, which is reclaimed land from the sea here. Really kind of a neat area. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Lesson 4 today, but I just want to focus on really the discussion question. The discussion question this week was whether or not leadership is caught or taught. And I think you heard in the Bennis video that Warren Bennis believes that it's caught and not taught. Well, if that's the case, then why do we have so many degree programs and classes and everything else talking about leadership? And then another question I want to pose to you as well, and we're going to focus on this one in lesson 7, is can you be a leader if you don't have any followers? So you can talk about leadership characteristics, but if no one follows you, then are you in fact a leader? Well, think on that one long enough and your brain will start hurting. Really what I wanted to address on this one is a little bit on strengths. You're going to have a class in this degree program that talks about strength-based talent management, and that's really an interesting conversation. For those of you who have not done it, I would encourage you to read Tom Rath's book called Strength Finders 2.0 and take the assessment that's part of that, because you'll answer some questions and it will have 34 different characteristics that you will be graded on and ranked on as it relates to your strengths. Now, the neat thing about this is that it talks about strengths not from the perspective of what you're good at, but strengths as from the perspective of what makes you strong. So what are those things that when you do them, you just go, wow, that was fun, I really enjoyed that. And so there's a whole philosophy out there that I prescribe to, actually, that talks about strengths. In the Christian world, we talk about that from a spiritual gift perspective. And so I think it's not only makes sense, I think it's actually biblical in what we do. So all of those things, I think, we're gifted with a few things out there, and some of the things we're just not. And so if you think about whether or not leadership and those types of tendencies are caught, in other words, are you kind of born with them? Are they taught, or can you acquire them? I would tend to fall on the same side of the fence that Bennis does, that they are caught based upon those things that you have. And I don't know that I'd use the word caught. I'd probably use the word, given early on in your life and the way that you're wired. So think about that a little bit as we go forward. And then again in Lesson 7, we'll talk about can you be a leader if you don't have any followers? And so the key message in Lesson 4, and then also upcoming in Lesson 5, is we've done all this talk about leadership. We've talked about the 10 leadership characteristics that Spears has, and they're all great to talk about, but unless you put them into action, they're actually useless. And so Lesson 5 will talk about that. Lesson 5 will talk again about your leadership point of view. We'll talk about that a lot deeper than we did in the first lesson. So a lot of your leadership point of view are those things that you value, but also look at them from the perspective of action. And how can you put these leadership characteristics into action? And that's part of Alan Lurie's address that you'll be reading this week as well to a group of Jewish rabbis when they graduated. He really gave them a charge to have acts of leadership and not just words of leadership. So those are really critical things moving forward. Now, let me bounce back a bit to Lesson 4. You did your second memo exercise, which focused on the why of servant leadership. So why are these things beneficial to the organization? And the second thing in the lesson was submitting part 2 of your course project. Now, what I find when people begin to do this, a lot of people forget about formatting. They forget about introductions and conclusions and headings all the way through the paper. So you'll probably be seeing some comments from me on those. Also, in your introduction and your conclusion, since this is a cumulative course project, your introduction and conclusion should change over time. And so your last submission in Lesson 7 should be a little different than your submission in Lesson 4. Some of you may choose not even to put an intro and a conclusion in the first part of it. All I want to make sure you do is to make sure you have one when you submit your final one in Lesson 7. Okay, so Lesson 5 coming up is going to be pretty neat. I talked about Lori and his address there. And then the third memo exercise will be due this week, and that's about what's in it for me. So remember, we've handled the what is servant leadership to your employees, the why of servant leadership, why are we doing that? And then the final one really focuses and ties in very nicely to this lesson because it's about acts of leadership. So what are those things that servant leadership will mean if placed into action with those people? So that is Lesson 4 recap, Lesson 5 preview, and from me and my buddy Big Buddha, have a great week. If you need to contact me, just send me an email. Skype is a wonderful way to do that. I've actually had a Skype session with a student already this week. So have a great week.